a very interesting topic for us, and it's very timely, it's patriotic, and we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of our country, and we are here because people have fought for our freedom. So, after you.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you for coming out today. Before I get started, I wanted to thank the Historical Society and Rebecca for giving me this opportunity. I've loved volunteering here the past couple of months, and so I'm very, very grateful to be here. As Rebecca said, my name is Laker Gomez, and I want to give some background on my family and how I came into the possession of a lot of these items. I've grown up as a lifelong history fan. I've always loved reading books and watching documentaries, especially about World War II. And it was throughout my youth that I heard a lot of stories from my grandmother about her older brother, Harry Opakowitz, and his service as a U.S. Army paratrooper in the Second World War. And several years ago, my grandmother reached out to Denny, the son of her brother Harry, for just a couple of mementos from his time in the service. And we were overjoyed when he sent a box full of pictures and documents and other books and whatnot. And so my love of history drove me to do a lot of research into all the objects that were in there to try to create kind of a timeline, chronological of where Harry started and where he ended up in the war. And so I made a presentation to present to my family, and that's what all this is, and that's what you're seeing before you. It was during Harry's enlistment that he began to send home all this documentation for his then girlfriend and future wife Jean to compile into a scrapbook, which is what all these different black pages are. This is the scrapbook that she actually made that survived and made it to me. It was a plethora of pictures and postcards and information that as I said, I compiled into this presentation. So without further ado, it's my honor to present to you a Rendezvous with Destiny, Harry Opakowitz's story. So Harry was born in Illinois on April 23rd, 1923. Pearl Harbor, as we know, was bombed on December 7th, 1941, the day that will live in infamy. Harry would then enlist on February 1st, 1943, which was about a year and a half later, and he would have his physical a week later and then ship out on February 18th, 1943. You can see some pictures here. That one right there in particular is in the middle. That's Harry wearing his uniform, and then next to him is his girlfriend and future wife Jean. In front of them, the little girl there, that's my grandmother and his little sister Marie. Same thing down here. That's another one of Harry with my grandmother and their even younger sister Kathleen. And then the one on the left is Harry and Jean. I also included Harry's draft card up there on the top right. That actually wasn't with all this stuff. I found that while I was doing all this research and found it in a database online. Harry wasn't drafted, but he volunteered, enlisted, but that's, to this day, people, all men 18 and up have to register for the draft, and so I thought it was, cool to include it in here. Also a ration book at the bottom here. Those are all ration cards that on the home front they would have to use to get their rations to help support the boys that were fighting over there still. So after Harry enlisted, he would go off to basic training at Camp McCain in Grenada County, Mississippi. This camp was named for Major General Henry Pickney McCain. I'm unsure of his exact graduation date, but we know that basic combat training started out at 13 weeks before the war. It was then increased to 14 weeks, and then in March 1943, it was dropped to just 6 weeks, and then in late 1944 to just 2 weeks. He would be assigned after basic training to the 87th Infantry Division, the 347th Infantry Regiment, which was based out of Camp McCain in Mississippi. We also know that he did some additional training at Fort Jackson, which was likely his infantry training on March 22nd, 1944. There's a rifle qualification card right here. And all these items are up here on the boards as well, so I'd encourage you to take a look at them afterwards. But yeah, these different rifle qualification scorecards and some chemical warfare kind of training cards and different booklets for basic soldiering information. And we also have some folders of postcards from Columbia, South Carolina, and other places in South Carolina. So that's how we knew that he was there in that area at that time. The division insignia for the 87th Infantry Division, you can see it right here at the bottom. That is a golden acorn on a green background. The golden acorn was chosen by the division during World War I to signify strength. And as I said, they're based out of Camp McCain, Mississippi. These are all pictures of Harry's from Camp McCain, him with different comrades and on their day-to-day, and some booklets like newsletter type of things, because these ones are dated September 1942 or 1943 rather, and those are up here as well. So after training in Fort Jackson and in Mississippi, training would be moved to Tennessee Maneuver Area on the 3rd of December 1943 for the 2nd Army No. 4 Tennessee Maneuvers. As a side note, D-Day would take place on June 6th, 1944, which is when Harry was still doing training, so he wasn't a part of that yet. On the left here, you can see two different passes. Those are like the leave passes that they would have to fill out and have signed so they could go off base on leave. The one at the bottom in particular has a little writing on top of it that says, "Here's the kind of pass we got to Memphis, only I made this one out myself." So that was kind of like an example that he probably filled it out himself to send to Jean for her to put in the scrapbook. And this picture right here in particular, you can see a little flag in the middle that says the 347th on it, and that was actually the first way that when I first received all this stuff and first started looking into Harry's service. As I said, I knew he was a paratrooper, but I didn't know that he was in something before that. I didn't know that he was in the 87th, and so seeing the 347th on there and seeing him wearing the golden acorn patches, those were some of my first keys to start looking into what those were and looking into where they were based out of and kind of putting all the pieces together. And yes, but then as I would go on though, I'd find more paperwork with the different regiments on and the different divisions on it that helped confirm exactly what it was, where he was. I have a video here of some veterans of the 101st Airborne Division depicted in the miniseries Band of Brothers as they describe their enlistment and entrance into the paratroopers. Why they enlisted, you can see the patriotism in a lot of them. And you also see them describe that they would receive a financial bonus of $50 an extra per month for becoming a paratrooper, because it was more of an extra schooling they had to go to and a little extra danger than just the regular infantrymen might have to go through. So those were just some reasons that they would enlist in the airborne, which leads us to Harry volunteering for airborne training on June 10th, 1944. He would then start school on August 2nd, 1944 at Fort Benning, Georgia, and that's still today where they do jump training for the Army Airborne. He would then graduate on September 2nd, 1944. I highly recommend looking through the paratrooper training booklet, which is back there on one of the boards. It's a little blue booklet that you can see there. It helps describe kind of the process of jump training. It shows it was broken up into phases back then. I think they call it A phase, B phase, and C phase. Today we would refer to that as ground week, tower week, and jump week, based off of where they were in their learning progression. There's a page in there as well that has notes that Harry took on each of his 5 jumps that he did between August 28th and September 1st. It would describe how the weather was that day, what number man in line he was before jumping out, and how the jump went. I think 4 of them he said were good jumps, and 1 of them was a bad landing. There's also an additional miniature kind of booklet, like a parachute log booklet that I have back there as well. That it would have been carried by the paratroopers while they were doing their training, probably on their person to keep notes. Harry didn't fill anything out in it, but he, like I said, he used the blue one instead. On the right there as well is a slip that it was an inspection slip that the riggers would have filled out when they were checking the gear before the paratroopers would go up and do their jumps, because that was a very, very important thing that they needed to make sure that all their gear was good to go, that it wasn't going to malfunction in any way. It was an important job back then, and it's still a very important job to this day in the airborne. So on this picture, or on both of these pictures here, you can't see it from back there, but there's a little blue cap, or blue emblem on the cap, and it's actually this one right here. That's just the parachute, which at the beginning of the war, the airborne and the glider troops, they wore identifying patches on their garrison caps. They're actually color-coded too. The blue ring around the glider one right there, that would signify infantry. If it had a red wing or a red ring like that one, it would signify artillery. As the war went on, though, a more practical combined airborne and glider cap patch was issued, and that was this one, just to kind of simplify things and not have to manufacture both and differentiate between the two. They would all start wearing that one, and I have a picture of Harry wearing that specific one later on in the presentation. After Harry would graduate, you can see him wearing a patch in both of these as well, which is this one right here. That's Airborne Command, and as I said, he's wearing that patch there, which I would imagine that was kind of like an in-between phase before he had been assigned to a specific division, a specific regiment even. And once he got assigned, though, he would become a part of the 3rd Battalion, 327th Infantry Regiment in L Company, which was a glider infantry regiment, and so he would start wearing that one. I don't have any pictures of him wearing that, but that would become his new patch, as well as the Screaming Eagle as it became a part of the 101st Airborne. The 327th and glider a lot of times aren't really understood by people. It can kind of be seen as not as perilous as parachuting into battle, but as a matter of fact, several companies of the 327th suffered casualty rates as high or higher than many paratrooper regiments. Some companies, such as ACG and the 401st Regiment, took casualties as severe as the most engaged paratrooper regiments. And on D-Day +2 of Operation Market Garden, glider flight suffered a 30% loss of gliders. And on the left of the slide there, you can see a letter that was written. It's hard to see the writing, and it's kind of hard to decipher it too, but I was able to transcribe it though. And it says, it was written on October 1st, 1944, on Sunday at 6:30 p.m. It says, "Hello folks. Well, I guess it's about time for me to write, so here I am. I got back into camp Thursday. We have to pull 2 weeks of detail, and then we get 2 weeks of advanced training, and then I don't know what. I'm feeling just fine, and I hope this letter finds you all the same. It really does feel good to get back here, and I sure am homesick, but I'll be over it in a few days. I met Stanley Opat yesterday, and he's going to ship out Saturday to Fort Meade. If I would have been back Wednesday, I would have been shipping too. Have you heard from Joe yet? And what's his new address? I suppose Dad got the garage pretty well built by now. Maybe it won't be long and this war will be over. Mom, I want you to give Jean my diploma. She's making a scrapbook of me and the paratroop. I was supposed to give it to her before I left, but I forgot. Please give it to her when she comes over, for I promised it to her. Don't forget. It really is hot out here. In fact, it's too hot. Well, I haven't much more to write, so I'll close for now. The best of luck to you all, and may God bless you all. I'll write more in a few days. Love, Harry. P.S. Excuse writing." And so I included that letter in particular for several reasons. One, it's the only writing that I have from Harry that isn't on one of the postcards, and there are a lot of postcards. They're in a box up here. Most of them were written in 1943, which is when he was in basic training still. A lot of them detail his daily life in basic. He talks about being tired and how hot he is and how much he's looking forward to seeing Gene on his furlough, and a lot of them detail what week in basic training he's at too. But I included the letter, as I said, because it's something different than all those. In addition to it being on a pretty cool piece of stationery with an airborne trooper kind of overlaid on the background. There's some key pieces of information in there though that were of interest to me. He mentions, have you heard from Joe yet, and what is his new address? That's his older brother and my great uncle Joe, who I actually did know. I knew him in my youth. He was also a soldier that fought in World War II. I don't know very much, if anything, about his service. He never talked about it throughout my youth growing up. So any kind of scrap of hearing about his service or hearing about him during that time, I find really, really interesting. And there's a picture of him later on as well in the presentation as well. And the other reason that I wanted to include it is because he talks about the scrapbook, which, like I said, is the reason why that this is all here, that I have all this. He mentions Gene is going to be making this scrapbook, and it's pretty cool to me that I have exactly what it is that he was talking about, and especially the graduation letter as well, which I have as well. Next up, I have another video, which I don't think will play either, but it's a video that helps describe the usage of gliders and how they were used and what they did, and why they're important to the airborne, and it shows their usage during Operation Market Garden, which Harry wasn't a part of either. But after Operation Market Garden, and where Harry would end up first in Europe would be in the Battle of the Bulge, the Ardennes Offensive. Now, the Battle of the Bulge, if you don't know, was Hitler's final push west. He pushed up into the Ardennes Forest in Belgium against the Allied lines, which were rather thin up there, kind of pushing a bulge into it. At the same time, he was making another push east against the Soviets in Kursk. But the Battle of the Bulge in particular was on December 16th, 1944. And once he pushed in, the Americans pushed a lot of the 101st Airborne up there to help with the defenses of this key town of Bastogne. But once they got there, though, the Bulge was kind of so strong that they actually cut off the 101st and encircled them in there. And so they had them cut off from any kind of outside help or supplies in a siege around Bastogne. But the 327th in particular formed a defensive sector on the south of Bastogne, which actually covered half of the perimeter. And the reason why Bastogne was so important was because it was the only kind of hub in the Ardennes Forest, this dense forest in Belgium, where there was a crossroads of roads and railways, and it would have been easy for Hitler to get a lot of men and supplies around to push them around in his counterattacks. But on December 22nd, with Bastogne still surrounded, the Brigadier General, General McAuliffe, who was in charge of the 101st, received an ultimatum for surrender from the Nazis, which was actually delivered to Major Alvin Jones, who was the commander of one of the battalions in the 327th. This ultimatum read, "The fortune of war is changing. Battalions are ready to annihilate the USA troops in and near Bastogne." The Germans were demanding the total surrender of the Americans within 2 hours. And it was within those 2 hours that McAuliffe found the suggestion tactically and morally ludicrous. His full response to the Germans read as follows: "To the German commander, nuts, the American commander." And the Germans famously had a hard time translating that. They didn't know what to think about that. They didn't know how to take that, but the American public loved it, and you can see some newspaper clippings here of kind of a series that the local newspapers were running about nuts. And this newspaper article here shows some pictures of the airdrops that were taking place to help resupply the 101st. As I said, they were surrounded, so there was no way to get supplies in through the ground. They had to be airdropped in, and that was only if the weather was good enough as well, which wasn't all that common in late December in Belgium. But this is one of the few times that it did happen, though. So here you can see a map of Bastogne and of the Battle of the Bulge in particular. I believe this was December 23rd. Some of the key areas here I wanted to point out was Bastogne is right here in the middle. Down here is another important town of Marvy, and up here is a town called Champs, which will be mentioned. But all along here, anywhere you see the 327th, there, and there, that's all that southern line that I mentioned that all of the 327th were covering. But I have a detail of all the action that took place that involved the 327th in Battle of the Bulge, so I'll read that out. The Volksgrenadiers and the elite tank-based Panzer layer were engaged in Marvy, which, as I said, is down here on the bottom. One tank did break into Marvy, but it was destroyed trying to make a run towards Bastogne. Several days later, during the night of December 23rd, the enemy attacked and managed to place tanks behind the U.S. lines between Marvy and Bastogne. So that would have been along this run right here. Company G and Company F lost 1,000 yards during that intense fighting, but they did not break. The Germans withdrew when their command center was destroyed by U.S. artillery. It was after this that the 327th proceeded to the north sector of Bastogne Theater of Operations. Their 2nd Battalion was involved in clearing Champs after a German armored element broke through paratrooper lines. Later, the 327th made an open field maneuver against armored enemy troops east of Foy, which helped secure that village. The ferocity and speed of open field attacks surprised the German here and paratrooper regiments on the flanks of the battlefield. And so I include all that to tell you that they received a very appropriate nickname for themselves, which is the Bastogne Bulldogs. They had some of the most intense fighting of any of the regiments there in and around Bastogne. And there's actually a movie called Battleground, which was made in 1949, that follows the company of the 327th in the siege of Bastogne. It has a couple of actors like Van Johnson, John Hodiak, and Ricardo Montalban. And I have some pictures of newspaper clippings with pictures from Bastogne. Harry didn't really take any pictures in the Battle of the Bulge. They were obviously pretty busy. But he did write a couple of postcards though, and that was a fun recent discovery that he was able to write even during that intense fighting. One of the postcards in particular was actually on Christmas Day, and none of those postcards actually mention anything about the fighting though. They're all about just how cold he is or how tired he is. He never mentions anything about how scared he might be or how intense the fighting might be. Whether that be for operational security reasons, not wanting it to fall into enemy hands, or it's just he doesn't want to worry his loved ones. He doesn't want his family or his girlfriend to worry about him. But on December 26th, after a 10-day siege, the American tanks from Lieutenant General George Patton's Third Army lifted the siege of Bastogne. Famously, the airborne troopers who served in that Ardennes forest in 1945 claimed that they never needed Patton's saving from the encirclement. And you can see a newspaper article here that says 101st wasn't saved at Bastogne and didn't need saving. And that's a quote by General McAuliffe talking about his men, that they claim that they had it all under control. There's a menu here that I included that's from January 27th, which would have been after the Battle of the Bulge, but I have it to compare probably some of the food that they were eating, a couple of weeks after the battle happened compared to what they were probably eating during the battle, because during the battle, as I said, they were just getting airdropped in supplies of probably sea rations, probably not the best meals, but here for breakfast on January 27th, they had steak, French fries, wine, butter, to name a few. Supper, they have wine again. Dinner, they have chicken soup, fried chicken, more wine, and so that's probably a little different than what they were having in the Ardennes forest. So after Bastogne, the 101st would go into France first, actually, but I didn't include that here. I'll include it later on for a different reason. But after France, they would go into Germany. And I love this picture in particular, which shows a bridge that's partially or fully destroyed, because that's a bridge that went over the Rhine River which river that separated France from Germany. And so in an attempt to slow down the Allied advance, they tried to destroy any way that they could get over that river. But they actually missed one. Famously, they missed one bridge that they tried to blow it up, but it didn't fall. That was the bridge at Remagen. There's a lot of very cool stories and a movie about it. And I always loved that story. And so coming across one of the bridges that did get destroyed that Harry was able to see and take a picture of, I was very excited to see that. Here's another bridge that they constructed to get over the Rhine as well. And a lot of these pictures were taken in Neuss, Germany, which is still up in the northern sector, just outside of Dusseldorf, Germany. And all that was right near the Dutch, German, Belgian border, which makes sense that would have been the path that they were taking, because that was all right up there close to the Ardennes forest and up in France. Like I said, they were. So that's probably where they would have crossed into Germany. But they wouldn't stay in the north for long, because they would make their way south to what is considered the birthplace of Nazism, which is down in the Bavarian Alps near Munich, Germany. Munich is widely considered being the birthplace of Nazism, because that's where Hitler really rose to power. That's where he had his famous beer hall putsch, which was a big kind of uprising that he tried staging, but that's where he would eventually get arrested and sent to prison and write Mein Kampf. And so it all kind of snowballs from there. But there's still a lot of fanatics that were in that area in the Bavarian Alps down by Munich and near Salzburg, Austria. So this is where the 101st would go next, and I include this map because a lot of these names used to confuse me about which was which. But Berchtesgaden is actually the village down here at the base of the mountains. The Obersalzberg is kind of the whole compound, and that would it was built by the Nazis. Martin Bormann's house is there, Hermann Göring's house is there, Hitler's house is there, an SS barracks was there, Gestapo headquarters building is there. There's a lot of very important Nazi buildings that are all there. The Berghof specifically is Hitler's house. Off to the left of it is the Muslaner Kopf, which is a tea house that Hitler would go and visit. He would like to take walks there after lunch, especially. It was kind of a quiet, secluded place away from everything for him to be alone and to collect his thoughts. But the Kelstein house, which is up here on the top of the mountain, that is the Eagle's Nest. And that was a birthday present on Hitler's 50th birthday. Presented to him that, ironically, he was terrified of heights. And so he only went up there, I think, like 14 times, and didn't use it too often, but it was kind of supposed to be a formal meeting place, a hall for engaging with dignitaries, and there's an elevator that actually goes up to the top of it. That's how high up it is. This is a modern day picture of it. It's the only building kind of from that whole Nazi era of buildings that were put up there that still exists to this day, but you can see it's right there on the edge of the cliff. So if you're afraid of heights, you can see why you wouldn't really want to spend too much time up there. But on May 5th, 1945, as I said, the 101st would enter Berchtesgaden. The Nazis would surrender in Italy on May 2nd, and then in Germany 6 days later on May 8th. So it was all around this time that Hitler had committed suicide. VE Day was announced, and that the 101st were entering into Berchtesgaden and later up into the Obersalzberg. There's one of the postcards that Harry wrote that I really found interesting, because during this time, during the surrender of the Nazis in Europe, there was a question of, well, there's still a whole nother front going on. There's still the Pacific. Japan looks like they're not surrendering anytime soon. And so, we're going to have to mobilize all these troops from Europe and send them over to Japan. That's another thing that they mention in that docuseries Band of Brothers. They talk about it. And so to find this postcard where Harry writes to Jean, "Dearest darling, I do hope our plans work out this summer, but I am in doubt of it, as it looks like the Pacific after this war here. Love, Harry." And so I was excited to find him mention exactly that same sentiment, and that they were worried that they were going to have to go over there and fight a whole nother war. And that's the way he describes it. That the war here is done, so we have to go fight that war over there. But as we know, that wouldn't happen. Thankfully, the American troops in Europe wouldn't have to go to the Pacific. But for a while, Harry lived in Berchtesgaden. That was Harry's home for a while. There's some newspaper clippings here that talk about Berchtesgaden and kind of detail it to the public about it being Hitler's nest, a lure for the Yanks. Sightseers are wowed by Hitler's Eerie and Göring's art. 10,000 Yanks swarm over Berchtesgaden. I have a booklet here that was acquired from that area that has pictures and a lot of really beautiful colored pictures and descriptions of the area and whatnot. I have that up here. This is a map of the Obersalzberg that was probably given out to the troops in that area just to help them kind of get around. You can see down here Hermann Göring's house, which he was the head of the Air Force, the Luftwaffe of the German Air Force. That was Martin Bormann's house, and he was the personal secretary to Hitler, a really, really bad guy. And that was Hitler's house down there. And up here is the Planterhof Hotel, which has Harry written on top of it, because that was where the 327th would make their home for a while. That's where they would be staying. These are some pictures from outside the Planterhof, as well as inside the dining room in there. One of the pictures in particular, I think, is labeled. There's like a table that says like, this is where Harry sat. And so yeah, this was Harry's home for a while. Here's some more pictures of the Obersalzberg and of the Eagle's Nest and everything. You can see down here, these are the Gestapo headquarters and Hitler's house, which are both blown up, both destroyed. The SS barracks kind of bombed out, is what that one says. Up here are some pictures of some more of the buildings up there. And this is a good down the mountain kind of view, looking up at the Eagle's Nest, which still looks very similar to how it looks to this day in that modern day picture that I showed. But yeah, like I said, it's right there on the cliff. Here's some pictures of Harry posing with some of his stuff that he found. There's the swastika flag behind him. He's wearing a helmet that looks like from the old Kaiser days, and he has a saber that he's holding both of those. This one, he's posing with a statue of a woman that Gene wrote in the bottom here, Harry and his girlfriend. Here's some more like convoys leading into Berchtesgaden and whatnot, and looking up at the hotel. These are some of the lake that are there at Berchtesgaden, the Königssee, and some more of the buildings around it and whatnot. That's Martin Bormann's house blown up. But here's the pictures I was talking about earlier, that these were actually from Innsbruck, Austria, which was relatively close to Berchtesgaden. But that's Harry with another comrade, and Joe, his brother, Joe Opakowitz, here on the right. And so as I said, I was very, very excited to find these in the scrapbook. That another piece of Joe's story that, as minimal as I have information about his service, it was cool to have something, and especially cool to find out that he was able to meet up with Harry, and these brothers who grew up in Illinois, of all places, they find themselves meeting up in Austria after one of the most terrible wars of the time. After Austria, after Berchtesgaden, Harry would actually end up in Poland, in Zakopane, which this was a recent discovery of mine. I never realized that this was in Poland until I did some research on it. It's particularly interesting, or cool, I guess, because the Opakowitz name and family is Polish, and so this was an opportunity for him to go back to the motherland and see some sights in that area, some very, very beautiful buildings and architecture around there, and looks like a ski slope here. There's some pictures of Harry with his skiing gear on and whatnot, and I believe that was taken at Zakopane. It was either there or somewhere else in Germany that they went to. That those were both kind of snowy areas. It was, throughout this time, throughout likely Berchtesgaden. These are some pictures that he came into possession of. That these were actually German pictures. These are all pictures that I particularly find interesting because of how unique it is. That we can have pictures from the American side probably more often than pictures from the German side. And so down here is one of a German family. He's wearing his uniform there. In this one, he's wearing kind of a white officer's like formal uniform, probably. These are some German cemeteries here. This one is of it says Poles and Russians working in the field. A German posing with a 88 gun, and some more of soldiers around some trucks and whatnot. Here's some more. These ones in particular are fascinating to me because they look like they're taken like in a town, probably pre-war. You can see the flags all flying, and you can see people lining the streets, looking on at the parade that's happening. There's a plane here that's flying over a German city, German posing with a machine gun, probably a MG-34 for that era. These two, or there's actually several, but these postcards are actually, they were in the collection with all the other postcards, but I one day realized that they're actually on the back. This one is written in German, so that wasn't Harry's, that was another one that he came into the possession of. And it's kind of hard to make out the handwriting, but it seems I was able to kind of translate it from German. And it says, "Sending dearest greetings from Bergen for my dear parents, Hermine Lubecker." And so I have all that stuff up here in particular on these pages. You can look at both sides of it. When you come up and look at the stuff, some of the black paper is brittle, so I wouldn't recommend picking up any of that, but any of the physical stuff, for sure come up and take a look at it open, and if you want to look at both sides of that one, I would highly recommend that. Here's some more objects and pictures that he acquired. This is just a regular kind of German Nazi badge that they wear on their uniform or on their cap. This one is a Luftwaffe, so that was the Air Force that they would wear on their cap or on their chest. This piece right here is actually a piece of leather. It's titled "A Piece of Leather from Hitler's Chair," which you could imagine was likely from the Eagle's Nest or from the Obersalzberg, one of the buildings there. Possibly one from Hitler's home itself. Down here are some stamps with Hitler's face on them, and some flowers, which are winter flowers from the Eagle's Nest. And these are some more pictures of the Germans, the German side up here, like they're in the snowy conditions in the winter, and some more down here from a different time, probably. These are some airplanes that he took pictures of. These are all German ones. That I included this one in particular because this plane right here is particularly interesting. It says a German jet-propelled plane, which would have made it the Messerschmitt 262, which was the first jet-propelled fighter aircraft that was used by any country. It was really a modern marvel. It could have changed the war completely, but thankfully the Germans were running low on supplies, they're running low on time, and so they weren't able to make enough of them to really have an effect on the air combat. But I was ecstatic to see that he saw one and took a picture of one, and so I wanted to make sure that I included that. So, as I said before going to Berchtesgaden, he went to France, but also after all of Germany and Austria, he went back to France, and I wanted to include it here, though, because the 327th was actually deactivated in France, and one of the last postcards that we have from him was sent from France in the city of Sens, which is just south of Paris. There's also some pages with pictures from Strasbourg, which is another town kind of right on the border of Germany and France. It's likely post-war because I would imagine that the nice kind of pictures that he took from that city weren't done during combat. It was probably done after the war was over. But on the left you see pictures from different landmarks in France, and on the right here that's a like a pamphlet from the Can-Can, which Jean wrote on top here. Why Harry didn't like Paris, France, ha ha ha, and there's pictures of girls dancing in the Can-Can. So I thought that was a funny, I liked her commentary that she put throughout the scrapbook that she was making for him. So after the war ended and Harry was able to go home, he would get discharged on January 18th, 1946 at the rank of technician, 4th grade, which was an NCO rank that's equivalent to sergeant. He would then die on April 7th, 1965, and according to his death certificate up here, which I found in a database, like I said, he actually received the Bronze Star. But I tried contacting the National Archives to get any kind of information on it that I could, but they gave me the bad news that they don't have any of his discharge paperwork because of his last name being Opakowitz. That was in an area, likely in an area of the National Archives that caught on fire in the 70s. So there's a lot of paperwork from soldiers in World War II that got lost, unfortunately. But they were able to give me his final pay stub, which is this right here, and this was only a couple weeks ago that I was able to get this from them. And I really was excited to get, like I said, another piece of the puzzle, just more stuff to add to his story. There's lines here that describe what he gets paid for each kind of thing that he is, and one of them is a paratrooper combat pay, which was, I believe, $60, and down here his total amount is about $319 that he got paid on that final pay stub. But that is all. I included this picture though because, like I said, this is the cap patch that has both the glider and the parachute on it. This would have been before he discharged because he's a technician, 5th grade here, which was still a corporal. But like I said, I wanted to include it because it's one of the last pictures of his service that we have, one of the latest ones that we have. And so yeah, I wanted to make sure I include that in there. But I appreciate you all coming out and listening. It's been my honor to share his story. And I have all these objects up here that I'd be more than happy to show to you guys and to talk about. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to open up any of the books or take a look at any of the postcards, and specifically the German ones. You can look at both sides of that one, but be careful with any of the other black pages. But yeah, that's it.